In October 1914, in the low, flooded fields of Belgium, a small army stood in the path of a much larger force. The place was the Yser River. The time was the first months of the Great War. Belgian soldiers, exhausted and outnumbered, were ordered not to advance, but to hold. What followed was not a victory. It was a delay that changed the course of a front. Belgium entered the war with no illusions of grandeur. It was a neutral state, its independence guaranteed by treaties that had existed for decades. When German forces crossed the Belgian border in August 1914, those agreements collapsed in a matter of hours. The Belgian army was small, under-equipped, and never intended to fight alone against a continental power. Yet it was forced into that role almost immediately. The German advance was fast and methodical. Fortress cities like Liège and Namur resisted, but only briefly. Each delay cost the attackers time, but it also consumed Belgian units that could not be replaced. By September, the Belgian Field Army was in retreat, moving westward toward the coast. The goal was survival. The cost was territory. By early October, what remained of the Belgian army reached the Yser River, a narrow waterway running parallel to the North Sea. Behind it lay the last unoccupied strip of Belgium. Ahead of it stood advancing German infantry and artillery. There was no strategic depth left. No further line to fall back to. If this position failed, the Belgian army would be destroyed or forced into exile. The terrain offered little natural defense. Flat fields, canals, villages built low to the ground. The river itself was shallow in places and easily crossed. Belgian engineers had few materials. Defensive positions were improvised. Trenches were cut into wet soil that collapsed as quickly as they were dug. Weapons were worn. Ammunition was limited. The soldiers holding the line were not elite formations. They were reservists, volunteers, survivors of earlier defeats. Many had been fighting since August. Their uniforms were faded. Their equipment mismatched. Officers struggled to maintain cohesion among units that had lost comrades and commanders. German forces, by contrast, were advancing with confidence. They had already crossed most of Belgium. Their expectation was that the remaining resistance would break quickly. Orders emphasized speed. The Yser was seen as another obstacle, not a final barrier. What the Belgian command understood, and the German command underestimated, was time. Every hour gained at the Yser mattered. Allied forces were regrouping farther south. Defensive lines were forming in northern France. The Belgian army's role was no longer to win battles. It was to exist. To delay. To remain visible. As October progressed, the first attacks began. Artillery fire shattered villages along the riverbanks. Infantry probes tested the weak points. Belgian units fell back, then returned. Positions changed hands repeatedly. Losses mounted. The river became a boundary not only between armies, but between collapse and endurance. The stand at the Yser was never meant to be remembered as heroic. It was a necessity. A holding action carried out by men who knew there would be no relief behind them. The fighting along the Yser intensified as October wore on. German artillery increased its pressure, focusing on river crossings and road junctions. Shells fell continuously, tearing apart embankments and flattening villages that had already been abandoned by civilians. The landscape changed daily. Fields turned to mud. Water rose in the trenches. Visibility dropped under smoke and rain. Belgian units rotated when possible, but there were few reserves. Many soldiers held positions for days without rest. Rifles jammed for moisture. Communication lines failed. Orders were passed by runners moving through open ground under fire. Some never returned. German infantry assaults came in waves. Small groups crossed the river under cover of darkness. Others attempted daylight crossings supported by artillery. When they gained a foothold, Belgian counterattacks followed. These were close engagements. Rifle fire at short range. Bayonets. Hand grenades that were often improvised. The Belgian command faced a critical decision. Conventional defense was failing. The river could not hold indefinitely. Retreat was impossible. The only remaining option involved the terrain itself. Near the coast, a system of sluice gates controlled the water levels of the surrounding polders. These gates had been used for centuries to manage flooding. Now, they became a weapon. The order was given to open them. Over several nights, engineers and local specialists opened the gates at high tide. Seawater flowed inland. Slowly at first. Then steadily. Fields disappeared underwater. Roads became impassable. German positions closest to the river were flooded out. Supply lines broke down. Artillery pieces sank into mud. Belgian positions were also affected. Trenches filled. Men stood in water for hours. Disease spread. Equipment was lost. But the flooding created a barrier the attackers could not easily cross. The front stabilized, not through force of arms alone, but through controlled destruction of the land. German attacks continued, but their momentum was gone. Assaults stalled. Casualties increased with little gain. The flooded zone forced both sides into static positions. The Yser front hardened into a line that would barely move for the rest of the war. For the Belgian soldiers still standing, survival replaced strategy. Units were consolidated. Wounded were evacuated when possible. Others remained in flooded positions until relieved. Many names were never recorded. Temporary graves vanished under water and shellfire. The world's attention moved elsewhere. Larger battles erupted to the south. New fronts opened. The Belgian stand became a footnote. Yet it had achieved its purpose. The last free corner of Belgium remained unoccupied. The army remained intact. What had begun as a retreat ended as a line that could not be crossed. Not because it was strong, but because it could no longer be ignored. The final German attempts to break the Yser line came in late October 1914. These assaults were concentrated, forceful, and costly. Artillery fire preceded infantry advances. Shells struck flooded fields, sending water and mud into the air. Visibility was poor. Orientation was difficult. Units advanced without clear reference points. Belgian defenders fired from embankments, ruined houses, and hastily reinforced positions. Their lines were thin. Some sectors were held by a handful of men. Ammunition was rationed. Orders emphasized holding ground at all costs. In several locations, German units reached the riverbank. Some crossed. Small pockets formed on the Belgian side. Fighting became fragmented. Command structures broke down. Officers led from the front because communication was impossible. Losses were severe. Entire Belgian platoons disappeared over the course of a night. Survivors regrouped wherever they could. Medical support was overwhelmed. Wounded men lay in flooded trenches, waiting for darkness or silence. The flooding continued to expand. What had been a controlled measure became an enduring condition. The land itself enforced the line. German units withdrew from exposed positions, unable to operate effectively in waterlogged terrain. The offensive effort exhausted itself. By the end of October, the attack ceased. The Yser line held. There was no celebration. No announcement of victory. The Belgian army counted what remained. Thousands were dead. Thousands more were wounded or missing. Villages along the river were erased. The front settled into stillness. This was the moment that defined the stand. Not a single charge. Not a decisive maneuver. But the refusal of a broken force to disappear. The line existed because men stayed where they were told to stay. Long after the reasons became abstract. Long after the cost became clear. The Yser front did not disappear. It simply stopped moving. The water remained in the fields. Weeks passed. Then months. What had once been villages became reflections in still water. Roads ended without warning. Fences leaned and vanished beneath the surface. The Belgian army stayed. Reduced. Reorganized. Quiet. Many of the men who had held the line were gone. Killed in the flooding. Lost during night attacks. Buried where the ground no longer existed. Their names were written down, when possible. Often, they were not. Temporary graves dissolved into mud. Markers washed away. The land closed over them. New units arrived to replace the old ones. Different faces. The same positions. Orders were shorter now. Hold. Observe. Survive. The line became routine. A flooded horizon. A silent enemy across the water. Artillery far away. Occasional rifle fire. Mostly waiting. Elsewhere, the war grew larger. New battles. New fronts. New numbers. The Yser was rarely mentioned. It did not move. It did not fall. It did not advance. It simply existed. For the men who stood there, time lost its meaning. Days blurred together. Uniforms rotted from constant damp. Weapons rusted. Letters from home stopped arriving. Some soldiers were transferred. Some were wounded and never returned. Some remained until the war ended. Few spoke about it afterward. When peace came, the water was eventually drained. Fields reappeared. Stones were cleared. Villages were rebuilt nearby, but not always in the same place. What lay beneath was left untouched. Too deep. Too scattered. Too quiet. History recorded treaties. Offensives. Armistices. The stand at the Yser became a line on a map. A strategic delay. A defensive success. The men themselves faded from memory. No monuments stood where they waited. No crowds gathered where they held. Only flat land remained. And slow water. And a front that once refused to break. Then even that was forgotten. If this story mattered to you, consider subscribing. More forgotten history is coming.